I'm a sci-fi kind of.
Because it's
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm a sci-fi nerd, but I'm not that. I'm a sci-fi nerd. I got a few things to say. And I read the book.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to see so many faces. This is wonderful. As Anne says, we've been meeting for about almost 2 years now. Basically across the campus, looking at all the different places that creativity is being talked about. And, people talk about innovation and engineering and business and all these different places. And it seemed to us that why not get involved in that whole movement and maybe even show some leadership with it. So we've been meeting, and it's actually been very exciting because we have people wanting to join us and wanting to sort of move this forward. And so we thought, we have formed the Atlantic Center of Creativity as an initiative last year in March, and we're working on getting that actually eventually approved or accepted as an actual center at UNB. But at the moment we are operating. We do have a website and we have a Twitter account and so on. But one of the things that we thought would be interesting to do this year and really helpful for the center as well as UNB and the community, because we're as a group, we are not just UNB based. We have the College of Craft and Design is very active with us, and the Beaverbrook Art Gallery and a number of other places, the Makerspace and so on. So we're trying to include as many people as possible who are interested in the idea of creativity. So we thought about the year of creativity. Let's find a time that we can name this. And so it's the 2015-2016 academic year, and we discovered that all kinds of things were already happening across the campus and around the community. And so you'll see the list in front of you. Year of Creativity has a lot of things that are already underway. and things that we're adding on to that. So it's a work in progress, so people who have come forward and said, can we add that, can we put for instance, the music series, can we add this to it, and so on. So we keep adding it and augmenting it, so that list will keep growing as the year goes on. So we're really excited about it, and tonight is the launch, or the very first event, and I can't think of a better person to start the launch with than Dr. Robert Kelly, who talks about creative development, innovation, and design thinking, and how that applies to what we do, all of us, in our teaching and learning. So, and as I say, keep looking at the website. There will be information on there that comes along to update that, and really pleased that you're here for the beginning of the year of creativity. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. So now we'll get back to Robert. Robert's one of those unique individuals who is able to straddle life in more than one faculty. And so he's an associate professor in both the Faculty of Arts at U of C, and he also works in the Workland School of Education in the graduate programs there. He has a new book coming out titled the same thing as the talk tonight, Creative Development, Transforming Education Through Design Thinking, Innovation, and Invention. As someone with a science background, I'm very interested in those kinds of ideas. When I was at U of C, I used to go over and work with someone in engineering who was an artist who helped the engineers think about connections between designs in nature and what they were designing, fascinating kinds of things. When we have a 4-year-old classroom here, we watch those children. The innovation and inventions that they make are incredible. And I'm afraid sometimes the school system kind of drains that out of them. We sort of steal it from them. And so I'm really delighted that Robert could be here to share his ideas about how important this is in education, but also in society in general, not just in what we do in schools, but beyond. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Kelly.
Okay, let's start. Okay, everyone, be creative, use your imaginations. I remember saying that as a young teacher. Just a little background on myself. I'm not from Alberta, so I can tell all the Alberta jokes that I want. I'm from Northern Ontario. Yeah, number one in Alberta right now, country and western song is I gave her the ring, she gave me the finger. I think that's good. I can say that here, I can't say that. That felt good. Anyways, I want to talk to you, I'll frame this for you. I'm going to talk about 3 terms. Well, the concept of creativity, creative capacity, and creative development. Okay? So I'm looking at creative development the same way we look at literacy and numeracy development when you bring it into the mainstream. So 2009, I was speaking at the University of Western Ontario, which is now Western University, my alma mater, and my brother, my WestJet brother, now works for WestJet, who was a principal of a core K-8 school in London, he was in the audience. I get off the stage, and first person to greet me is him, and he's so good. He's the best brother you could ever have. He says, and the talk was, creativity is a primary rationale for education. It was the title of the book that I did in 2008, Creative Expression, Creative Education. I get off the stage, and he's a teacher of a really tough school. He had 20% transient and police in his school every day after his grade 7 and 8s and 5 and 6s because the high school across the field was using them for the break and enters, right? And the police would never charge them, so whatever. And I got off the stage, he said, that's nice, that's good, but what does it look like? What will I be doing differently? What will my teachers be doing? What will I be doing? What will our school be like? And if you don't answer that, this stuff's not worth anything. Please don't send me Ken Robinson's YouTube about creativity, why schools need creativity. 2008, don't send me an email after this saying, have you seen this? Yes, I have. Great, he started the conversation. Anybody who's an educator, how do we operationalize this? How do we operationalize it? So 3 concepts. Concept of creativity. Creative capacity would be the level of complexity at which one can engage in creative practice. Creative development is the growth in creative capacity over time. And that's what I'm interested in as an educator. How do we bring that into play, give it a vocabulary? That's what I'm writing and researching about. To that end, I coordinate 2 graduate programs in the Workland School of Education at Calgary. And one's into its 4th year, creative development in educational practice. The new one is design thinking for education. And they were prototypes. And I love living what I talk about with the students. Nothing worse than somebody talking about creative practice who's just lecturing on it. You have to be living it. And I tell them, so you are in a prototype right now. You're in a prototype. We're halfway through our first iteration of this year-long 4-course graduate level master's program that's 1/3 of an interdisciplinary MEd degree. I have to compete with 25 other programs. So, and it makes a lot of money. I mean, those 2 programs alone have grossed over $500,000. But I think that's why they keep me around, not because of the creativity bit, but I'm wondering why is it, and it relies on attendance and stuff like that. So why the creativity piece? And I'm thinking, oh, where do I start? Let's go back to how we're socialized. I want you to think about how you were schooled. What's our prime socialization, right? Your family and your family experience, and how your formal schooling was. Do you remember back to grade 2, what happened to you in grade 2? Do you remember any of that stuff? Well, here's what I'll give you one instance. Yeah, I remember in language arts, I remember there was always a spelling part, and then Friday we had to take the vocabulary for the week, and there was 15 words, and we have to use 5 words and a story, which I love doing. I love writing stories and reading, and I'm going to read you a story today at the very end, by the way. Still writing stories. And so a grade 2 boy will do anything for a laugh, just want attention. So I got the idea, why don't 3 of us write a story, the same story but from the different perspective of 3 different characters. And then we'll all volunteer to read it, and Mrs. Armstrong will go nuts. We'll drive her crazy, right? And whatever. So we wrote this stupid story. It was about Charles Brown, Snoopy, World War I pilot, and one of us was a pilot, one of us was a French farmer working in his field, another one was a French policeman, and the pilot gets shot down, lands on top of the farmer. Fortunately, it was a haystack. The policeman gets him arrested. It was just a dumb grade 2 story. Anyways, so we all volunteered to read it, and I stood up first, and my 2 friends, we read it, and you know what happened to us? We got called out on it. Called us to the front. We got asked you, whose idea was this? And I'm thinking, oh, well, we never did it again. Never did it again. So I thought, okay, and I thought it was a really neat idea. Grade 9. Now, let's move fast forward. I want you to fast forward. Think about your socialization. And everybody's is different, right? I'm not saying this is everybody's. Grade 9 and grade 9 to 13 in Ontario, that's what Ontario, grade 13. We wrote these provincial achievement tests or something. 3 of us got called down to the office. Principal said, congratulations, you 3. You guys are all in the 97th percentile of the province in this thing. And what my first question was, Tom, does it count? Does it count to my average? He said, no, you beat, I was the lowest of the 3. He said, you had 90, I was in the 90th percentile. He said, you beat 90% of the people in Ontario who wrote this achievement. I said, well, what good was it? Why did we write it? Because it doesn't count my average. He said, and so I went home that night. My parents both passed away in the last 5 years. My mother had grade 11, my dad grade 9. Typical, he worked, fought in World War II, veteran of that generation, right? I went home, my mom says, how was school today? I said, I got 90 on some test, but it didn't count for anything. That's how stupid I was, right? Fast forward, grade 12. Another set of achievement tests. This time, I never wrote a final exam in high school. I checked out. I mean, I had some great teachers too, really, really good teachers. Don't get me wrong, but I knew what the system was like. I knew what it was all about. I figured it all out, and I answered the test in a zigzag. So I did it A, B, C, D, E, D, D, C, B, went zigzag like that. It took me longer to do that than I had to answer the dumb questions, okay? And anyways, I ended up in the, I think it was 17th or 18th percentile, which I thought was really neat. I was really excited about that I beat all these people just by doing the zigzag strategy. Nobody at my high school or in Toronto administration picked up, what happened to this kid? What happened to him? Well, I checked out. I was still going to school. I know my favorite teacher was my grade 13 English teacher, Mr. Stoss, and he was really good. He turned me on to Shakespeare and T.S. Eliot and all that kind of stuff and then, so fast forward, first year teacher. By that time, I had learned to give the teacher what they want. one of the problems, what I'm getting to now. I want to paint a culture where a lot of our socialization is counterintuitive to a culture of collaborative creativity, which I'll paint for you very, very shortly. First year teacher, really nerve-wracking. First month, I'm in a junior high. I have grade 7 social studies and art, and I'm a gifted ed teacher as well. Okay, so principal says, Bob, you're going to be inspected by the superintendent next week. I go, oh, great. Now, that's really nerve-wracking when you're a first month teacher, right? I'm being inspected. I'm going to be marked. We hate being marked. We hate being compared, right? So I figured out, what am I going to do? I'll find out what's on the test. I'm going to cheat. Okay, so I thought that was challenging. So I went into the staff room. I asked my colleagues. I said, what is Mr. P looking for? I can't give away his name because of FOIA, but I'll have lightning strike me and all that kind of stuff, right? What's he looking for? And they said, oh, he loves class participation. I said, that's it? Because, well, if you have good class participation, you'll get a good report, especially if you're just your first year. I said, oh, I can do that. So I went to my class. Lucky it was my homeroom. I had them before he was coming in to a grade 7 social studies class. So I told them, it's just a true story. I said to them, I'm being inspected today, okay, by the superintendent, and he likes class participation. So when I ask a question, I want everybody to put their hands up for every question. I said, if you know the answer, put your right hand up. If you don't know the answer, put your left hand up. So the superintendent came in, sat in the corner, he's got a 3-piece suit on and clip and his little notebook, and I'm asking questions, and everybody's got their hand up. And you ever, when you're teaching, think you're really hot? And I'm power teaching, right? You go, hey, Tommy, I asked somebody the wrong answer. I asked 2 wrong answers and a right. And I hope he didn't catch on to the pattern, right? That it was all fixed. Anyways, my report said, great class participation. So I passed the test. Fast forward. I'm teaching high school now. I'm trained as an elementary teacher, as an elementary teacher, taught junior high for several years, taught high school for several years, academic and elective. Now I'm teaching, social studies, grade 9, command economy of the USSR at a high school just west of Calgary, the corporate who's who of Calgary. These are all really wealthy kids from wealthy families. I'm teaching them about the command economy of the USSR, the polar opposite sensibility which people are about. Now, you know and I know any teacher and worth their salt would stand on their head to make remote content relevant. I call that teaching creatively. That's one thing, okay? I'm going to talk about that space, learning and teaching creatively, taking mandated curriculum and doing our best to invent, interpret, to engage students and whatever. There's another space, though, I want to talk about, learning to create. And that's invention, self-instigated, original work over and above curricular content, okay? And that's where I live for this. So now I'm teaching command economy of the USSR. How do I make this relevant? So I decided to do this. I said to them, okay, and we have our textbooks, really old textbooks. I'm going, ratty. They look like they were written before the Russian Revolution. I thought, how did they know this stuff was going to happen? Anyway, I didn't understand that. So I said, okay, we're going to run this class like a command economy of the USSR, and like politically like the Soviet, like a Russian political system or a Soviet political system. From now on, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we're going to live this. First thing, write an essay. What is communism? What is communism? So I gave them their textbooks, 1 page only. Give it to me before you leave, and I'll mark them. Give them to you tomorrow. So they handed their papers. I marked them. I gave them all 60. They all got the same mark. Okay, and I put comments on them. So I commented. I said, I told them what they got. You know what? Like I said, outstanding piece of writing, should be published in a professional journal. 60. Then I've got not appropriate for this grade level. 60. Passed. So I hand them back. You know what's going to happen, right? All the hands go up. Of course, these are all keeners. Mr. Kelly, and they talk like that too. And I said, you said my rating was outstanding, but you only gave me 60. Well, I know they're going to ask that, right? I said, well, look it. I only had so many marks to go around. So I thought I'd share them evenly amongst all of us. So it's not 50, we're not passing, we have 60. We're just above it. It's not 80, we don't have that many marks. We have 60. And they said, and now the questions come on. Well, why do we have to work harder and all that stuff? So, and it was just a simulation. I didn't give them 60. They didn't tell their parents. We had parent-teacher interviews the next day. Oh my. Parents came in guns a-blazing. I said, just a simulation, relax or whatever. Fast forward, I'm teaching a 4th year painting class, BFA. Wow, and now I'm thinking, okay, it's in an art department, BFA, should be really creative. I've had this person for a semester, and she has a studio full of work. I'm into this dialogic assessment, and I said, okay, let's look at your work. She goes, what's my grade? So what's your grade? I said, let's talk about your work. What's my grade? I said, well, let's talk about your work first, then the grade will come out of that. She goes, I want a letter grade now. I said, okay, I'm going to give you an R. You have an R. She goes, what's that? I said, that's my first initial. She said, you can have it. You can have it. She goes, well, that's stupid. I said, well, how do you think I feel? I'm missing a letter off my name. Now let's talk about your work. She ended up with a B, Bob. That's my other first initial. Okay? So now we look at these things and I'm thinking, wow, I have first year, I teach on both sides in education and I teach design on the Faculty of Arts. Wow, and I have students who come in first year, then I have grad students who are seasoned teachers who are coming in for a year-long creative development program, and it's really kind of exciting. I want to share with you how I sort of conceptualize that, and that didn't come easy because it wasn't a matter of teaching, I'm not teaching about creativity. I'm not teaching, although that's in there, because it certainly is a discipline. I mean, if you look at Mark Runco out of California, he's the editor of the Creativity Research Journal. I mean, his new book, well, it's the 2nd edition of a book, 2014. The bibliography is 70-some pages long. He cites a lot of the current literature in that field, mostly from out of cognitive psychology, right, out of those areas, right? And there's a lot of stuff out there where we locate. So you find it in psychology, you find a lot of literature for business and management. I mean, they got it a long time ago because the market economy is kind of a paradox. Because in a market economy, people understand the advantage of innovation. It means product design, the next iPad, and it means enhanced. Hey, where's creativity going to in marketing? You know, incredible amount of energy and resources going into that, right for consumption. And it feeds this consumption monster that goes on and on. So a lot of people understand creativity from the consumption side of the coin. But do they understand it intrinsically from the process having engaged in creative practice? Okay? Now, here's what happens. I get asked this all the time. Are we all creative? Are we all creative? Okay? Now, my contention would be, and I'll just move to this one. Here's a schematic I use for how I characterize creative development. Okay? You can see on the bottom, intuitive, I think we all, as a species, absolutely, we're not intuitive. I would call it intuitive adaptive creativity. That's not my term. Michael Curtin in the UK. I can give you the DNA of all of these things that I have here after this, if you want. Hey, look at a preschooler. Look how somebody crawling around, how they navigate, how they deal with constraints, how they constantly invent and experiment. It's pretty interesting, right? And we have that disposition. The issue is, and how many have been through a drive-through and you're starving in the winter and you go through Wendy's drive-through and you order a salad or a chili, but you manage to eat it while you're driving. And it's not distracted driving either. No. And because you're really hungry, you'll eat it. That kind of thing. Well, we'll invent all the time. We constantly adapt. And it's, hey, teachers, educators are great for improvising. And I got a question for you. You got to answer this honestly. How many of you, how many teachers, educators in here? I'm sure most of you are, right? A lot of you. How many of you have shown up for work unprepared sometimes and had to make something up? Wait a minute. Let's start off asking this question. How many of you have never told a lie in your lives before? No one? Okay, another question. How many of you are compulsive liars but don't want anybody to know? Left hand up if you're a liar, right hand if you're on. So, hey, lying is a classic example of intuitive adaptive creativity. Constant. Which little kids fib, little wee kids. I didn't touch it. I didn't do it. You hear it all the time. We learn it's adaptive behavior, right? I don't want to take the blame. I don't want to get whacked by someone or whatever. I'll make something up. If you told the truth, well, look at Jim Carrey's movie, Liar, Liar. When he tells the truth to everybody, he gets in trouble, right? So, do you remember your favorite lie? Do you remember your favorite lie? I don't mean it in a bad way, one that didn't hurt anybody. You know, that kind of thing. As a teacher, I'll tell you, I have to share this with you. Once, I was teaching high school, and I got seconded by U of C. They had a Center for Gifted Education at that time. I was seconded by them to work there. So I was gone 4 days a week. So Monday to Thursday, I was at the university. Friday, I would come back and teach whatever my partner teacher, Lena, had prepared for. I'd just walk in, and I would look at the desk, see what she had written down there, and then I would just teach that day, and I would leave. She did all the work. She was so good, and that's the way it was set up, right? So, but they still saw me as their teacher, because they knew I was coming back after a year. So it was a grade 12 class. One day I walked in, Mr. Kelly, same kid, by the way, in grade 12 now, same voice. Mr. Kelly, what are we doing for our next unit? And I had no clue. I had no clue. I hadn't followed anything. I was unprepared, so I was going to lie. So my next training is, I might as well lie, because I really don't have the answer. But I could have told the truth and said I don't know. Instead, I just chose to lie. I don't know why, but I looked over in the corner, like where my bag is, and a little filing cabinet in the corner of the room, there were three things actually. A pair of plywood-shaped cats, like this big, which I later found out, after I lied, that they were given to my partner teacher. They were going to be a birthday present to a language art teacher's niece. They were going to be bookends, and she wanted to paint them. The cats, please paint some cats, I'll make them into a bookshelf for her. I didn't know that. I just saw 2 plywood-shaped cats. Beside it was a big giant jug of Vaseline. It was about that big. I'm thinking, I've never seen a jug that big before. What's it used for? I later found out it was being used as a mold release agent for an art activity that my partner teacher had planned. Well, I didn't know that, so I said, our next unit, instead of saying I don't know, I said this. I said, we're going to do cats. Vaseline cats. So, problem is when you start lying, you have to keep lying. And they go, oh, that's stupid. You're just making that up. Says, no, I'm not. Now they're challenging me. No, I'm not. That's the truth. We're doing Vaseline cats. So I'm in here next Friday. And they said, oh, you're lying. Prove it. I said, go down to the shop right now. Mr. D is cutting out these cats as I speak. I sent him down. Lucky he was on the other side of the school. I go next door to the biology lab. I phone Don. Don, quick. Play along. I'm playing a joke with the kids. Says, you made like you're cutting out these cats out of the plywood. So he gets the plywood out he's cutting out because he cut those out. I knew he did. And so the kid comes back to him because I goes, hey, he's actually doing this. They're cutting out cats in the shop. Now we're in it. We're doing Vaseline cats on Friday that I come in. I show up next Friday, 22 plywood cats. Now these are our academic grade 12, the leaders of tomorrow. We might be voting for some of these people in this election. That's why our country might be screwed up. I don't know. So, and they were excited, and I thought, I'm going to just push this. We're in it now. Vaseline's one of the worst mediums you can use. It's got no body, it's got nothing, and all the cats are the same. And I'm going, be creative. Don't copy. And they're slathering it on. They're all the same. Anyways, and I had to go, this is the cutting edge of contemporary art. You guys are breaking boundaries. And they got really excited, and they slathered more on, and it just kept sinking in. And we ended up with 22 oil-soaked cats. And then the next was, let's put them on display. Yes! And we run down the hall, and there was an empty cabinet outside the principal's office, and we put 22 of these ugliest things I've ever seen on display. Principal comes out, British gentleman. Bob, what is this project? This goes, this is Mr. Watson, this is our Vaseline cat unit. And he looked at me, and he looked at the students, and he said, I just don't get this modern art. I said, Dennis, modern, wait till we get to postmodern. My favorite lie. Now, the word creativity. Hey, you could look in all the literature, there's a zillion definitions. And you know what, I don't mind wrapping myself around a chosen one. After going through all this stuff and doing all the comparisons, I used Todd Lupart. He used to be out of Paris, René Descartes, now I think he's at Princeton. And I love his writing on definitional writing, a sequence of thoughts and actions that leads to novel adaptive production. Sequence of thought and action that leads to novel adaptive production. Now, there's two sides to that coin, right? And if you want to read about the etymology of the word, read Jean Pirto, P-I-I-R-T-O. Her 2004 book, I think, 2006, called Creativity. She does an analysis. And this stuff is very recent, by the way, in the literature. It's not if you think about it, I mean, if you look as far as education, psychology goes, I mean, is it Graham Wallace, 1926, when he puts out his stuff on stage theory? You know, 4 stages of creativity, you know, as far as problem setting goes, and preparation, incubation, illumination, verification. 4 stages, 1926. And then a whole bunch of iterations have come past that, and I'll touch on those as we go along. But and Jane Peter goes, to make something new or novel. I mean, creare, the Latin means to make. So I always I interpret it as thought to form. There's a resultant form, there's something. So if it's just pure thought, imagination. Or if you want to call it creative thinking, that's a term I have trouble with, goes around, but leave it at, imagination. I know a lot of people with tons of ideas, but they don't produce anything. So they're very imaginative. Are they creative? I say if there was resultant form or whatever, I'd call them creative as well, if you're going to use that. And I find the vocabulary is very problematical. I remember once being at a department meeting, listening to somebody, staff, faculty, having an argument about the term creativity, and I counted 4 working definitions around the table. So it was like the Tower of Babel. They're all using different working definitions. So I use a sequence of thought and action that leads to novel, adaptive production. Okay? So here's the thing. We spent all this time on discipline competency, and I call it discipline complexity development, big term, whatever. That we spend a lot of time on content, right? And a lot of the stuff that we do when we talk to students and when we deal with students. So when we're dealing with a mandated curriculum, right? And I give an assignment. Is the outcome known or unknown? Does the student already know? And if you're onto that, as a student very young, well, I'm going to give the teacher what they want. That's why I gave you those examples of my own schooling. I'm going to give the teacher what they want, right? We learn that very, very early. How many have had that? Students come to goes, is this what you want? Yeah. Is this what you want? Boy, that drives me bananas. That's a sign that I've done something wrong. I look at that as a failure on my part, right? That they're just consuming, they're just scouting, and they don't own it. It's the language of dissociation, by the way, right? Oh, I got on your, what did you give me on your test? Or here's what I got in your class. Not their class, something wrong. They haven't taken ownership for it, and they've checked out. They've checked out. It's one of the characteristics, classic characteristics. You can walk into any class, any lecture hall, any grade, anywhere, study the body language of the students and of the educator, and you can figure out what's going on there pretty quickly. I call it being on a good date or a bad date. You ever go to a party? Look, study the couples at a party, study their body language. You can tell who likes each other and who doesn't. Study how they look. They look at each other, how they touch, how they talk. It's the same way with students in their work. They hand a thing in. If they don't own it, I always knew when I had a bad project when students never took them home. They didn't own them. Well, it was your project. It was a really dumb idea. I didn't like it. It had no stake in it, no investment in it. So, but at the same time, we have to equip students with discipline competency. You can't make this whole thing about creativity as we all sit in a room and we wait for a psychic breeze. We'll just wait for a psychic breeze. And and it'll happen. Some magnanimous wave is going to come over me, and that's that's a nonsensical kind of view. Now, we can be inspired. It's got to be built on something. It's built in discipline. Our problem right now, I think, is largely. I'll go back to this piece right here. Is that we have an imbalance, a definite imbalance, skewed towards discipline competency, right? And it's skewed by mandated curriculum or whatever. We have to deal with that. Now, a couple of notes. I was hired to lead a design group for a private consortium in Western Canada to design a 21st century school, K-12, do the ideal. My first question to them, I said, are you inside or are you outside a provincial, state, or nationally mandated curriculum? He says, well, no, it doesn't matter. I said, it sure does matter, because if you're not dealing with mandated curriculum, then we can do what we want. And I deal with schools that are doing what they want. Some I think are great, some are not so great. It's all in that last book I did, Educating for Creativity, the global conversation piece. So then they said, well, it's a private school, and most of our clientele would want the students to go to university, so yeah, mandated curriculum. Yeah. Okay, now we're doing another bet, and now we have to deal with that. Well, you have to deal with it. That takes up a large part of your day, right? And wedging in invention and stuff like that is really difficult. So what happens is I have all this material to cover, and we have achievement tests on top of that, and you may or may not agree with them or whatever, and then they become the tail that wags the dog, and it becomes this endless spiral, right, of measurement and consumption. But it really is a system built around consumption, and it's a system that's fundamentally whether we like it or not, despite the best efforts of all these great people in the system, because anybody in education is not in the business of invalidating people, of measuring, we're there, it's a public service, by the way, you know, most of us, and which means you've given your whole life and that for the well-being of other people. Well, that's a pretty high calling. So we're not out there to invalidate people, but the system is inherently invalidating, whether we like it or not. Because we get into vertical comparisons, and I'm going to move to right now, I want to segue to, it's counterintuitive to a culture that's conducive to collaborative creativity, okay? Where a lot of different things have to happen in order for us to, for that. And I know this from my lab, which is this graduate program, where I get 25 educators who are paying a big money to be in this graduate program, get a third of a degree, and the purpose of the program was to grow their creative capacity with the fundamental belief that the creative capacity of the educator has to be greater than the general creative capacity of those in their trust if you're going to enable an educational environment of creativity. Does that make sense? Make sense? See that? So I have to be able to work at a higher level of complexity in creative practice. Well, I'm not going to just, here, you know what? Hey, read my book. You'll become more complex. No, ain't going to happen. It adds another part to my car or something like that, or another watch or something like that, which I really appreciate, by the way. But I'd rather you, just while we're on this, of money. I have a son who's a business major. My first degree is economics. And he says I have the worst investment profile of anybody he knows because of risk taking on the stock market. Because I lost a lot of money on a little stock called Metalcore, which is a gold stock. I bought it at $1.50. It's now trading at half a cent on the TSX. You'd really help me out today is after this talk, you phoned your broker and bought shares of Metalcore. I would drive the stock price up and show my son that risk taking is really a good thing. Okay? And just decide, not selfish or anything like that. Anyways, let's look at cultures that are counterintuitive. We have, so you think about what is a culture of why do we do all this thing to equip people with all this content, hyper-consumptive. So what's the purpose of this? In the last book I did, I had Adam Royalty from Stanford's D School. He actually had a really good quote when I was talking with him. He said, why do we wait till people are in their mid-20s? So by the time we get to grad school or whatever, and now you have to come up with original work. Okay, what's your thesis going to be? Well, a lot of the majority of what I've done is consumed way into oblivion. Don't get me wrong, we need discipline competency. What I'm talking about is an imbalance. Why can't that be done in concert with, I think, creative development, our cognitive development, our traditional academic discipline competency kind of development, be balanced with creative development, and I think equally with social emotional development. Empathy, collaborative competency, that kind of thing, right? Because why have discipline competency if I don't have a disposition to be able to apply it? So what's this? So I've got a ton of knowledge, great. I know a lot about this. I need a disposition to be able to use it in a collaborative sense to create new things. So I had a chat. One of my favorite schools on the planet are the Chaos Pilots. It's a private university in Aarhus, Denmark. And I know these guys pretty well. I had dinner with them in Banff not long ago. And Simon Gaffnell, he looks at me and he says, look it, if you're going to be a change agent, just be one. Like that. And I started thinking, I'm thinking, if you're not a change agent, what are you? What are you doing in education? If you're not a change agent, you might say, well, that's not really what I'm here for. I'm here to give people discipline competency, which is valid. It's something we need, right? But I'm thinking, okay. So I came up with, in this new book, I have these 3 underlying kind of principles. And these are works in progress. One is the principle of infinite potentials. And I can show you this in idea generation, through idea generation. Let me just move to the, whoops. Oh yeah, right here, sorry. Right here, an idea. Okay, now you can map an idea, and so that middle one's an idea. It's a dot with a circle around it. Now, if you know anything about composition, a circular format, read Rudolf Arnheim, is a format that can really close on itself. No matter what you put in a circular format, the middle is the center of interest. There could be nothing there, and so a circle could close or it can radiate out and encompass all kinds of other things, right? And if you think about it, one of the biggest attributes of traditional educational culture is early closure. You invite students to do this, engage in an elongated exploration of ideas, especially with creative writing, and they go, the words aren't even out of your mouth with the assignment, and they go, I know what I'm going to do. They've already closed. They've already closed with the concept without any experimentation, prototype, or anything like that, right? And in creativity, idea generation, quantity is absolutely everything. Because you can prove mathematically, graphically, exponentially, that the more you have, that your probability of a greater or diverse outcome goes up exponentially. So that idea kind of closes on itself if I'm conditioned to give the right answer. What do you want? Is this what you want? If I know that all I'm doing is giving an answer that's already known in the system, then why would I have any reason to experiment? Did you ever experiment on a math exam? Did you ever experiment on a math exam? Have you ever experimented on an exam at all?
Not much.
No, you don't. You're trying to find out what's what. Outcome known. Outcome known. The other culture of collaborative creativity, outcome unknown. Very disconcerting, boy, for a lot of people. I have to deal with that in the graduate program all the time and move them forward. So this idea can grow. It can grow and encompass, and every time it intersects with another idea and a high stimuli environment, you create a new hybrid. And then, wow, but this requires fuel, and now there's all kinds of factors that limit this. Okay? And you can see that as this goes forward, factors limiting creative development. And you might recognize a lot of these, or all of them, or some of them, right? Early closure. We close early. We don't allow, we're not conditioned to, we're not socialized to experiment because we're not rewarded to. An experiment's a mistake. I will lose marks. I will go down the grid. I will be lower on the vertical comparison, and there's nothing great about that. Students walk in my very first day of class, oh, I'm a B student. They describe themselves that way. I'm thinking, what? You know what? In the first day of the creative development piece, people are introducing themselves. Some people are apologizing. Well, I'm not that interesting. My stuff's not very interesting. Oh, I'm not that good at that. I'm not creative. And it's like that. It's that I'm going, so they only do that once in my class. Because if they apologize or say something negative about themselves, we all stand up and go, that's fantastic. Anyways, try it. They'll never talk negatively about themselves again. It's not allowed. It's not allowed in my room. Outcomes known, we scout test. I gave that example. Dissociation, hey, if I don't own it, I can only go so long if I don't own you can be a hot teacher, really good at what you're doing, really engaging and whatever, and you can maybe hold students' attention while we're really plowing through this really heavy discipline stuff and method or whatever, and there's interest in there too, confronting the media, but after a while, if they don't have a stake in it, why would you invest in it? Okay, it's like dating somebody. Oh, we went out a few times, but there was really no emotional connection, so we broke off. Why would you connect? There's nothing in it for you. Extrinsic motivation. You, the educator, is always supplying the motivation. And that's very fatiguing for a lot of educators. I'm always the one who's driving my students. Why can't they take it and run? Well, that's an instructional design model I have. Like stage 3 would be that, self-instigated. We want to get students to that point. We want to get educators to that point, by the way. On the curriculum front, I'm involved with 2 provincial curriculum, actually in the arts areas, in Alberta and in Manitoba. But in Alberta, they hired me to kick off the provincial review of the fine arts curriculum in the province. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how am I going to approach this? I got all these government people. I'm meeting with 20-some people in 3 weeks. What am I going to do? So I did this. I started a Google group, a chat room, and I put everybody in it, and I put in the first salvo. I put every educator and every learner in the province of Alberta should be engaged in original research and production at every grade level in every discipline. That's what I put. So I put that in. Now I'm from Northern Ontario, so I was fishing. Okay, I'm not very good at fishing, but I'm fishing. Okay, so 2 weeks went by. No, I was 3 weeks. First meeting was 3 weeks after that. 2 weeks, no comments. Finally, somebody said, "What does he mean by original?" Then somebody answered, said, "I think he means no cookie cutter activities." And then somebody said, "What do you mean by original?" Finally, they asked me. 2 weeks. I said, well, then all hell broke loose. I said, I mean self-instigated, self-initiated, longitudinal explorations through several iterations of idea generation and prototyping over time, and something that's of personal, emotional, intellectual relevance to that learner. and I meant educator and learner, not just for the student. Not just for the student. Now that's a hard one. Oh, well, you mean all of us have to be? Well, we are. We're into intuitive adaptive creativity. So when we get back to, I mean, when I went up there to my very first day, that conversation went on. The very first thing I did when I got in the room was, I've got an associate deputy minister, you got all these people in the room, you got the hierarchy. One of the things you have to do in your classrooms if you want creative development or creative stuff to happen is make it statusless. Read John Sweeney, Innovation at the Speed of Laughter. Very good piece on making statusless cultures, okay? So you flatten it right out. First thing I did when I went up to Edmonton was I knew they were going to go, I'm so-and-so and here's my position. No. I said, I don't want to hear your name, I don't want to know your job. Introduce yourself as a verb. I got paid for this, by the way. That was so much fun. Anyway, a verb. A verb, who are you? What are you, an idiot? No, verb. So they went around, the first round was all stupid verb, dumb, sit. Well, that's pretty dumb. I know you're sitting. Sit, breathe. So, and they thought after one round we're going to stop. I said, no, keep going. And we went around 5 or 6 times, and now we got to find out about everybody. They start talking, using verbs, run. So find out what their hobbies were. It was really, really neat, but I wanted to flatten it right out. Let's have a discussion. It was hard. I mean, that after over a couple weeks, we got hung up on the classic question. Talking about creativity and education, how are we going to assess this? How are we going to assess this? I got a chapter in this new book on that. And anyways, so these are some of the mistrust, social isolation, summative assessment. That's always vertical comparisons. Hey, I was teaching junior high when I was a young teacher. I remember we had awards night. And there was about the same 8 people up on the stage. And there's hardly any parents at the awards night. Principal said, why aren't parents showing up for awards night? Well, you only validated about 5% of the school. So I was on that committee and we came up with this idea, the 5% club. Anybody went up 5%, it's not a lot, in any subject would get recognized. Well, we had about 60-some%. That was pretty low when I thought about it. Up at the school, should have been more than that. Up on the stage and the gym was filled. And I remember when I left the school, he said, well, what should we do with the awards committee? And I said, figure out a way to get the remaining 32% of the people up on stage for real reasons. To validate them. For their own ideas, for who they are. So the whole creative bit, so that when you're constantly on a vertical scale, hey, I have a daughter with special needs. I have a daughter, Katie's in her 20s now. Katie's got muscular dystrophy. She probably reads about grade 5 level. And it was a really fun time navigating her through the public system, right? So if we let her go, just whatever, so we found programs, invented programs or whatever, you know what I mean? Takes out all, she's an artist. She's had 3 solo shows and that kind of thing. And every fence they've thrown up, we've broken down. Why? Because we always work with people who had a disposition, the disposition of design or disposition of creativity, which means as educator, you better have the disposition. That's one of the most important things you can have in your toolbox. So I'm arguing for an educational environment that balances discipline competency with dispositional functionality. And the whole notion of what is it to be a creative person in the world at a complex level. And the only way you can do that is by engaging and creating yourself, right? So the graduate program that I run, 4 courses, that's not how it's done. They start in course 1, and there are 4 courses, but they do an overarching project over the year. They have to create a substantial piece of original work, and not something they've done before, and not something for their classrooms. So I have students writing books, starting businesses, doing social innovation, and they document it like crazy. So it's action research. It's an action-based research piece, right? Then we land after a year, and we do all the examination and dissection, and then we apply it to educational practice. Now they've got, okay, it's a little different now that I've seen it from the inside. I hit a roadblock. In ideation. I was trying to, on this one right here, they get so far. Now I started this in July. We're at the early October right now, and they had to set an update, and I Skype all of them. I do everything by Skyping between classes. I want to see their faces. 3rd level listening. I want to see their body language, because it certainly betrays them. You know what, interesting, the Chaos Pilots, this private university in Denmark I was talking about, I just was in Iceland 2 weeks ago visiting the Lunga School in Seyðisfjörður. You know The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the skateboard scene? It was in that village, right? Well, they started a school for 18 to 29-year-olds based on the Scandinavian craft schools. Well, Jonathan Speltberg, he was in his third year of the Chaos Pilots 4 years ago, and he came to see me when he was in Banff about creativity. He says, we've got to start a school like this. That was his third year project at the Chaos Pilots, starting a new school in a different country. And I'm thinking, okay, real world problem for a real world audience. And I remember back in gifted education, the old Joseph Renzulli stuff on enrichment for gifted kids. Type 1 is you do your usual enrichment, bring, show a video or go on the net, and then go on a field trip or bring a guest speaker in for type 2 enrichment, and type 3 enrichment for gifted kids, real world problems for real world audiences. And I'm going, wait a minute, that just sounds like sound educational practice. And if we're not doing that, then what are we doing with their students? They're just consuming their way into oblivion. Now, some of that consumption is necessary. Don't get me wrong, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? That's backwards. Rewind. I'm a gifted ed teacher at a junior high. I had a student come up to me, Mr. Kelly, for my project, I want to redesign the polar bear enclosure at the Calgary Zoo. At that time, Calgary had a polar bear enclosure, and 2 polar bears just paced back and forth. Back and forth. And it really made people sad, because I don't like what they're doing. I want to redesign it. I know what she had in mind. I'm going to make a little shoebox thing. I'm going to make a thing for you, and make a little diorama and give it to you, and you're going to mark it. I said, no, you phone the zoo, make an appointment with the zookeeper for that polar bear. I'll talk to your mom. You and I are going to go down there, and we're going to go get a tour. Well, I'm with this little grade 7 girl, Sarah. Now we're with a polar bear keeper. This is insane. Don't ever do this. So, and he said that they're vicious carnivores. Oh my God, they're just white fluffy bears. That's all I thought they were. He says, no, if you ever fell in there, he says, they'll get you. He's always 2 cages away from them. They have 4. He's lock, food goes in, lock, then he lets them in electronics. Yeah. He's always 2 away. Now, we're walking the passageway, there's their cage door right there, and there's about a foot space from the bottom of their gate, and they're right there. And he says, walk like this along the wall. I said, why? He says, because they'll do this. They'll get you. I go, oh, well, I can just see this now. Hello, Mrs. Robinson? I got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is that Sarah got eaten by a polar bear at the Calgary Zoo today. The good news is it was a really good field trip. I mean, we learned a lot about polar bears. Now, so, statusless culture. Now, let me just go back. I'm bouncing around a bit. I want to go back to here. I have 3 principles, okay, for culture and creativity. One is infinite potentials. If you map that idea generation thing, there's not one person in this room who has any idea what their potential is. That really upsets me, that people are walking around having been socialized into thinking, I'm this. I'm not saying you're all going to be Picasso or Einstein. That's not the point. But as far as infinite possibilities, I would want my students thinking that, waking up to infinite possibilities every day. And if you think about it, if you think about this right here, you can look, this thing will radiate, and it radiates, and it radiates, and it radiates, and when you pump stimuli into it, it will go on forever. Artist block, creative block, writer's block, all that block, lack of stimuli. Lack of stimuli, plain and simple. And as an educator, you pump it into the system, and as a mature creative producer, you learn to be a self-fueler. Creative process requires fuel. Now, the best fuel you have are the people sitting around you. We have so many classes where students don't even know the people sitting next to them, especially university classes. Not in my class. Not in my class. I break that down right away. And I do what's called, for idea exchange, I do what's called speed dating. And this is all part of collaborative development, okay? So we go back to this. I have the principle of interrelatedness. And it's the whole thing that if you walk in with a fundamental belief that there's no degree of separation between any of us, but we've been taught to be so private, so insular. We're so worried about what people think. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to make a mistake. That's the best thing you can do in front of your students is make a mistake. It gives them permission to experiment. That's a fundamental to creative practice. I remember my famous Klaus Oldenburg unit when I was a high school art teacher. He made soft sculpture like soft vinyl urinals and soft toilets. I thought, oh, We use garbage bags. So we got garbage bags and they made these soft things. They filled them. You know what they look like? Garbage. I said, this is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever had. Let's stop it right now. Now we go to the next project. They got permission. They got permission from me. Okay, because I was trying to do something in front of them. I'm prototyping. You prototype.
Yeah.
I'm going to experiment. You experiment. I'm going to live this. I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to live it with you. Okay? So, interrelatedness, why? No degree of separation. And I take that to inorganic. Just think about it. If we live in a world where there's 0 degree of separation between us and anything else, it's very different. And I really think empathy is at the bottom here. And I think social, so I have a balanced kind of view: social, emotional development, cognitive, the traditional academic side, and creative development. I think would lead, and in fact, I think our traditional education would benefit if they're surrounded more formally by the other two. But I think collaboration is the key to the base. Now, perpetual change and adaptation. I think we have to equip people to adapt to change and to create change and to create learning. To create that space, to invent it for themselves. So, and it's very important that we do that. So here's how I characterize creative development. It's the growth in creative capacity, the level of complexity in which we engage in creative practice, from our innate state of intuitive, adaptive creativity, which waxes away. I mean, this is what human nature, right? To the capacity to engage in very complex, recurrent iterations of sustained creative practice, characterized by recurrent rounds of idea generation and prototyping over time. And you can get some very complex things, depends what field you're working in, right? And then the sooner we can engage. Now, I have 8 developmental strands that I think are interwoven that make this up. And I created this construct because now we can start answering some of those assessment questions. And I'm not going to go down the summative road on this, although, but I can talk to you about the Torrance test for creative thinking, all that kind of stuff, and contextualize it. I think we've got 8 developmental strands, okay? One is collaborative development. It's the fundamental, it's foundational. And like I said, here's how I do it in my class. Statusless right off the bat. So when you brainstorm, I would never throw anybody into a brainstorm without they have to have money to bring to the table. So if I said, okay, group of 5 right here, you group of 5, I want you to, is what I think I do all the time, I want you to redesign the tea bag so it doesn't drip when we take it out of the pot and put it in the sink, compost, or the garbage. And it's based on a study done at Stanford. I always use Stanford. And it's called post-steepage seepage. Okay? That's the academic term. Okay? Somebody thought of that and got a shirt grant for that. Even at Stanford, they got a shirt grant. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, they had a partner in Calgary. So, anyways, so now, hey, brainstorm, first thing you do. I have the students for idea generation, number 1, and it's one of our developmental strands. See right here, idea generation development, then it leads to prototyping development, but we have to build it in a collaborative kind of culture, right? I want a culture that's conducive to that, so I'm going to make it statusless, whatever. Very first thing, jot down your ideas on how to design a tea bag. Everybody here, when we have a coffee break, go on first 5 ideas that come into your head, so you have some currency to bring to the card table, because you know and I know when you go to that table, guess what happens? The verbally dominant takeover. And if I have no money at the table, you aren't playing. You're not going to play in that card game. So everybody brings it in. But I don't do this, I don't avoid the circle brainstorm. What I do is a speed date. So now, let's say I have 20 students in a design class, education. I'll put 10 rows of chairs this way, 10, and we face each other. So Catherine and I would be in a pair, and so she has 5 ideas on redesigning the tea bag, and so do I, right? So here's what we do. And the goal here is plussing. People at a theater will know yes and. So the only comment you make about somebody's idea is you add another idea to it. You don't go, oh, that's a great idea, Catherine. Or I'd like to do that too. Cheerleading, hitchhiking. No. Save that for the staff room. Or for the schoolyard or whatever. Plus, she's going to say, oh, I know what I could do. I'd like to have existential tea, because this is a really stupid assignment. It's as bad as your Klaus Oldenburg assignment. But I wouldn't allow her to say that, because that would be negative, and I would feel bad, and I would have to go for counseling because of Catherine's comments. So instead, she would never say that, because Catherine's not like that. So she'd say, yeah, I wanted to make existential tea. That solves a problem. Great solution. Now I have to plus that. So if I don't have an answer, you don't say anything. What's your next idea? Plus. What was that? But the goal here, I want to think about it, because here's what you want to do. You want to be able to make offers and accept every offer, right? You want to be able to accept it. So if she gives me something as existential tea, well, how about an existential cup? I'm going to make the tea. And then you go and you start playing around, even if it's absurd. Because here's what will happen in idea generation. When you go to idea generation, this idea we thought was really stupid. We didn't say it to the other person. Well, that's pretty ridiculous. Existential tea. I'm just going to sit there and imagine it. Well, it saves the mess. I don't have to spend anything. It's actually not a bad idea. That was really smart, actually. Catherine, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what that was, an idea generation. You bank everything. I have my students, you record every idea, give it form. It's like money in the bank. And they either write it, draw it, I don't care. Give it any kind of form. A maquette, you name it, and then you bank it. You know what happens? Idea generation is recursive. So while this thing combines into different permutations, combinations, that idea has now become a hybrid, another hybrid, and it changes. This becomes relevant. It can become relevant even though it was thought to be irrelevant when you first said it. So the idea of yes, and we accept every idea and we bank it. Absolutely every idea. And I'll tell you, they will not. Students or nobody, I don't think anybody in class won't volunteer an idea if they think they're going to be invalidated. Well, that was stupid.
Change partners then?
Oh, so we moved. You're right.
Speed date.
Yeah, speed date. And so then 5 minutes. 5 minutes was your first. Amy. So Amy and I, and we plus each other. The goal is to grow my list. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I get to meet everybody in class. Levels it right out. Status list right off the bat. Now I know what everybody's doing. Now if you're doing projects, independent projects, project-based stuff or whatever, now everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and I know you, I can talk to you, and it levels. Hey, and somebody's bullying in the schoolyard, I have to talk to the person I'm bullying.
Yeah.
And now I can establish only positive things. And I've got labs going in a whole bunch of schools, right? And I've seen this over the years, what happens to it. Then it becomes automatic. I want to plus that. I want to plus that. And it becomes this big idea machine. This goes on forever. We actually in the art department at the University of Calgary have blackboards. Isn't that funny? Now the IT building doesn't. They have waiters and waitresses that bring a board too. Anyways. 3 blackboards. I filled it with this diagram on a blackboard, and a student took a picture of me with their cell phone and sent it to her dad at Simon Fraser, Al McKinnon, and said, "Dad, this is what I'm learning at school." This diagram. She sends me an email back. He's with the Imaginative Education Research Group. I know Al. She says, "Strangely, I understand what you're talking about, but this can go on. It's indefinite." The problem is these things right here will back push it. Okay. Now here's a typical pattern that you'll go through in ideation. Okay. So you have this divergent, convergent pulse. So you want quantity, right? And then what happens is one of the skills is creating a pre-inventive structure. When you're moving students towards invention. Innovation, invention. I look at innovation as a modification, as a modified kind of a system, a design of a product. Invention would be something that would be self-instigating from scratch. It could involve innovating or whatever, but I separate it by ownership when it comes to instructional design, okay? So this is a really wide divergence. Now, and then I converge, so it's this pulse. Diverge, converge, diverge, converge, and it gets narrower as we get towards closer to resolution, right? But we always do it. And the longer you can delay this, and I walk students through it. I have them, they want to close. They want to close so badly on something. I had a 5th year painting class once. They walked into class with all their canvases stretched, ready to go, and I said, "Who said you were painting on a rectangular formatted surface and a flat surface and on a white surface? Where did that come from?" No one had an answer other than the fact that they have acquiesced to standardization. And read Arthur Kessler, 1964, he calls it the anesthesia of conditioning. It's the way things have been done, so let's just keep doing it the same way. No, I said, I'll tell you what, I want 75 ideas for next class. They went nuts on me. I said, just sketches, anything, pictures, ideas, concepts. Where's your original work? None. It was all done from exercises with props. Did you not get moved into invention where you were conceptualizing? Did we not get you to stage 3? Stage 3? You've got discipline competency enough to get going. Why couldn't we move even further? No, they didn't have it. I said, okay, 75. He goes, what? I said, okay, 100. Next week they show up, 100 ideas. know what they thought they were going to do? Pick their best one and make a composition. I said, okay, I want you to pick the best 15. They make 15. Now, take those 15, I want 5 variations of each of those. Back to 70. And we're back up again to 75. What? Okay, 100. Now they know the deal. And I kept doing that until they almost were ready to kill me. And you know what? You should see where they went. They went into spaces here. It's called deferred outcome. Deferred outcome is the opposite of early closure. The longer you can delay closure, but the key here, you have to be pumping stimuli into this all the way. Because this needs fuel to sustain. It's called inventive momentum. And if you don't have that, here, what will happen is this. You'll end up, this will be, all this back pressure will stunt this, okay? So if this doesn't have fuel, you'll end up with this, and you need inventive momentum to go forward. Now, I've got collaborate. Collaborate's the foundational piece, okay? We have to learn how to validate ideas, how to record ideas, and how to grow them. And you'll find when you take it, somebody has an idea and we ask them to grow them. I sort of have two sort of families that go off of that. One would be a variation of an idea, okay? And the other one would be independent, individual ideas. And you gotta be careful, because what some will do is go into, oh, can I make this one heavy, this one light? Subtle variations, and I usually ask for a balance back. That way they explore the spread, okay, of possibilities when they're doing that. Okay, collaboration is key. I need students who are empathetic, who validate, who plus, who will at any time, I know where Amy's, I know what project she is, I'm reading something online, hey Amy, I found this thing, I know you're doing a project on this, and I can give it to her, and all of our projects are very different, depending what the context of your learning is. That way we can cross-fuel and support each other constantly, right? Speed dating I do throughout the whole project, and it's a generative bump. It's a generative bump, right? Now, the graduate program I have, we have months between courses. So I have a whole online supportive environment, a massive dialogue board of plussing. But then I Skype them. So I bring them back, and it only sustains so long, right? Then you've got to make form. You can only generate ideas for so long, and then you've got to go. Now, self-instigate, this is a tough one. Moving from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation. Boy, do we love it as educators, right? When your students just take something and run with it, right? Isn't that a nice high place? And students motivated, and you don't have to sit there pushing them and pull teeth, right? But that's a tough one. But we have to enable them to get into that space. So I know in Alberta they have 21st century learning. Creativity and innovation is one of the pillars of 21st century learning. But what's the sense if there's no space for it to get there? If we constantly have that skew effect of consumption and measurement, what we need is a balance. I'd love to see a fifth core area that's design the verb. You know, not a subject, but a space, an interdisciplinary creative space. But you also need a professional culture to fill it. I got interviewed by a journalist from Chicago a couple of years ago when the last book came out, and he said, what's your ideal school, creative school? And I thought about it, I said, I don't really need a building. I can have a farmer's field. I need the right professional culture, people with the right disposition, and then we can enable the spread of discipline competency and creative disposition, along with the collaborative social emotional development. Then we have a culture of collaborative creativity, which I think is the ideal. I think it covers all the bases. It gives us the knowledge base that we need and the disposition to use it and apply it, hopefully for positive means, for the benefit of other people and everyone else. This is the tough one, self-instigation. And eventually we have to design our instructional design so it's to impart that. Research and investigate. In a traditional system, we report. We research, we report, restate, retell. We know it might be variations, could be innovative how we restate and retell, but we want creative producers are investigative. Every antennae are always up and they're always on. And any stimuli is fair game for creative production. Okay, generate, idea generation. I separate them, thought, form. So I thought, form. I have a bunch of alternatives. I'm going to have to try the medium. Yes, you have to write a chapter of the book if you want to write a book. You can't think about it. I had one of my grad students goes, I'll never be a famous writer. I said, you're going to have to write a sentence first. Try writing one page. I'll never be a famous writer. Oh, critical analytical thinking. That's actually a painting of mine. It's 5 feet. It's actually, the canvas is 5 feet by 6 feet. It's part of the research I do. I study clouds on my back deck. Critical analysis, of course I have to be critical thinking in context of student invention, where it's a good date, where they're intrinsically motivated. Now I'm going to have to analyze. If I generate all these alternatives, I better have some critical thinking, analytical thinking skills, because how am I going to weigh this? Which alternative is value, which one doesn't, or whatever. Now I've got a context. Wow, and I'll tell you, I have a curriculum theory and design class that I teach to 4th year students. Now, does that sound like if you walked into a bar and you met that special someone you're going to be a life partner with and said, what do you do for a living? He goes, I teach curriculum theory and design. I don't know if they would stay with, no. Anyways. Oh, you know what I had them do? Alberta's art curriculum was written in 1985. Isn't that something? So I said, I want you to make some recommendations to the Alberta government. They thought they're going to write an essay for me. I said, oh no, you're presenting it to them. Somebody from Alberta at curriculum branch flew down for the day. They presented to them. Wow, they got more work done. Now, real world problem, real world audience. They started scanning the planet, and the person goes, oh, can you give me that website? She took all of them in and sent them all feedback. She says, we don't have that. We have this. Thanks, we thought about that, but here's what we have. And it was the best experience I've ever had. And I try and do that. So I try and move a lot of my stuff for that. So there's a real world accountability. This is really important, right? This complexity, of course. It's got to be embedded in a field, okay? And then sustain. That's the ability to take it and run with it over time. That's the where we develop into. Creative development is the growth from our innate disposition of adaptive improvisational creativity into the capacity to engage in complex iterations of prototyping and idea generation over time, self-instigated. There's quite a bit of a leap right there. And again, through all those strands. Now, instructional design, I'll wrap up right now. So I have 3 stages for instructional design. Stage 1, explore. I think that's our standard, classic, discipline complex. We do that all the time, and it's necessary. Best if it's experiential, if it's relevant, if it's interesting. And as educators, we better be designers. I hope you design and take this concept, and I'm going to make this exciting for my learners. I'm going to stand on my head. I'm going to do something really different. I hope you do that. So I wouldn't want to be in your class. I don't know if I'd want to be in that class. I've been in them. And I know when I'm that way as a teacher, I don't want them to be in my class when I'm that way either. So let's explore. I'd say you generally teach your own, generally educate your own, right? And it's necessary. But again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, stage 2, innovate. Now we're going to take some of the concepts, try some hypotheses out, try some early iterations of some of my ideas. I'm going to take the discipline field, and I'm going to try out some early creative forays, right? You often co-owned. And so I'm defining this by degree of ownership, right? So I'll take something, let's say Bernoulli's principle. Grade 6 unit in Alberta right now. So the very first thing will be to learn about it, and then we're going to make all kinds of things and do the experiment with the hairdryer and the ping pong ball where I hold it up in the air. That's good. We demonstrate the principle. Now let's apply it. So the students make airplanes, they do that stuff. That'd be stage 2. And they have to experiment, do all kinds of stuff. They have to modify an existing thing to experiment. And then stage 3, invent. Okay? Now this is a space that we don't have often. And when you get it from your students, you go, wow. One school I was working with, they did the Bernoulli's principle, the flight unit. Parents went to Hawaii after the unit was done, said, Jake made all these planes. I don't know why he's doing this. Well, unit was over, he's making them out of banana leaves. He's trying all this stuff, experiments, and I would put him in the stage 3, early stage 3, right? Where he was initiating on his own. That's what we want them to do. And how about social innovation? How about, hey, Kieran Sethi, Riverside School in India, 8 to 13-year-olds, they're doing social innovation all over the world. I met her in New York. I said, can you write a chapter for me? She says, yeah, can you have me a Canadian school because Canada's the only country we don't have in our initiative. One of her schools, what do the kids do? 8-year-olds, their project, teach their parents to read and write. Real world problem for real world audience. Wow. They came up with that, by the way. They got into stage 3 pretty early. They invented that social innovation. Now, here's a template that I use. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to read you a story. Sorry for going on. Time. This is what I use. A template you can use, play with it, prototype, to assess the sustained creative practice potential of any environment, business or education. Okay. So remember, the growth, I'd say, in creative development through those 8 developmental strands. So and the reason I have those 8 developmental strands, as an educator, you can tailor your instructional design to the needs of the student if you are aware of the subtleties that make up the comprehensive creative development. Okay? And we know we can grow in complexity, we know we can observe it. time, then in brackets, creative development strands, there's the 8 of them, plus educational or environmental factors equals sustained creative potential, practice potential. Okay, try it out. It works really, really well. Now, and I've gone on too long, sorry, I always do. Here's how you can contact me. If you want to get hold, just email me questions. rkelly@ucalgary.ca. New book coming out. It's in the winter time. I'm just finishing it off right now. Creative development, transforming education through design thinking, innovation, and invention. And the key is, what I'm trying to do is come up with an instructional design model on how we scaffold students into stage 3 invention. We often see, and the archetypes that we often have is, we often have programs that are stage 1, pure discipline competency. Then we'll see that stage 2, where a teacher's co-owned project is the top of the creative development of that student, when really there's another space, the pure invent space that exists right there. We'll often say, okay, everybody, we're not giving you any discipline competency, we're not even going to give you any scaffolding, but be creative. And that's the worst situation, because it shouldn't say, if the students have the high creative capacity, I would cut them loose. Why not? But you have to know if they do or not. You have to have a way of observing and knowing what makes up that. That's why I've done that creative development construct. Last little thing, when I was teaching grade 12 once, I had 3 boys come up to me and said, Mr. Kelly, do we have to take your Art 30 class? And they said it like that. Do we have to take your Art 30 class? Well, right away my back went up, right? What do you mean, you want to take my class? Don't you know who I am? No, it was nothing. Nothing. Still nothing. And I said, but I caught myself. I said, why? What do you want to do? I almost said no to them. They said, we want to make a movie instead. Well, they'll learn way more from that than sitting my class board. So I said, give me a proposal, storyboard the whole bit, and then I'll go from there. Give me a great proposal, got them their own room, set them up with their equipment, had somebody support them. I checked with them once a week. You know what? They created a 20-minute movie. Well, one of them is the sound man for the Conan O'Brien show. Another guy does movies for Bravo Network. Another guy, third guy, I don't know what happened to him. I almost held them back because of me. And I had to catch myself, but you know what? Their creative capacity was very high. Why would I put them through stage 1, stage 2? I brought them right into stage 3, right? So when you go back to this, there's the stage 3 invent. That's the place. This is where we often get to. But if you're going to ask people to be creative, you've made a big assumption that they've had all levels, that they have a high level of creative capacity. You have to know. I can predict what it's going to be. Okay? Now I invite you to create. I want you to go into a space where you won't normally go. I'm going to read you my very first short story that I wrote. It's not very long. It's really short, actually. That's why it's called a short story. I hate short stories. In grade 11, Mr. Blackledge, we were doing short stories in grade 11, language arts, and I complained. I said, do we really have to do this? He said, Kelly, you took my books and threw them in the garbage and kicked me out. I felt really badly about that. Of course, I didn't have to go to class, so I felt really goodly about it after that. I was at an exhibition in downtown Calgary in April. It was snowing heavily, and I just went home and I wrote. I've never written a short story in my life, and I wrote this. And this is a love story, so there's a bit of love thing in here. Anyway, and it's meeting somebody for dinner after. I live outside in Calgary and Concord. It was driving snow, so I had to get home before I got stuck on the highway on the Trans-Canada. So it's 2 people, they just finished being in a gallery, and they're at a Thai restaurant. Got it? A most unusual early spring evening. The din from the gallery crowd faded into the background as their gazes met. The young art held some intrigue. The wine was good, the smiles at her French dress even better. They pretended not to know, but they knew. They knew of the sweet scent of coconut rice, the anticipation of curry satay as they talked theater, art, and God, in the warmth of the eternal gaze while snow fell upon the spruce trees on this most unusual early spring evening. 3.5 bowls of the exotic steamed coconut rice later, and after several unpronounceable Thai adventures, they savored the last drops of their dessert espresso as the bottom of each demi-tasse revealed the last undissolved grains of cane sugar soaked in a most beautiful velvet crema. The gaze was relaxed, the smiles were softened, neither wanted to move from this moment. Isn't that a nice scene, romantic scene? She awoke from after dinner haze to excuse herself from the table to refresh in the ladies' room. He could not help but notice as she meandered through the late evening dining that she had forgotten her purse on the floor beside her chair. The supple hand-sewn Sergio Bertini leather bag lay partially open, nestled in stark contrast against the wrought iron chair leg. There was something strangely white about the contents revealed through the narrow purse opening. It couldn't be, he thought. No, it couldn't be. He nonchalantly dropped a napkin on the floor beside the leather bag. He stooped to pick up the linen napkin while closely examining the mysterious purse contents. Rice? Coconut rice? Her handcrafted Sergio Bertini embossed leather bag was filled with coconut rice. She had been filling her bag from the steady flow of rice bowls the waiter had brought continuously to their table. Had he been anesthetized by the magic of the moment to not notice her stealth? Why would she not ask for the usual take-home treatment for the leftover food? Had she done this at previous dinners? What else was in her purse? Pad thai, meat pop, cayenne? What about previous dinners? Last week was Indian, the week before lamb. This beautiful Italian handbake could be an archaeologist's dream. What did this all mean? A most beautiful evening of dining and sharing with this plus belle director. This plus belle femme was nothing more than a charade, a front, a facade for a rice thief? Who would have known? A rice thief. She had spoken on previous occasions of her frugal nature, and at the time it was perceived as strength of character, as admirable self-discipline, as maturity and wisdom. But stealing rice? Maybe it wasn't stealing rice, as the rice was paid for. We weren't stealing it. We were the legal owners. It must be hoarding rice then. She said, why would anyone hoard rice? Is hoarding rice a bad thing? Is there a looming world shortage of Thai coconut rice? Does she hoard pasta? Her handbag's Italian. I get that. Through the eyes met again after her brief sojourn in the ladies' room. The gaze was strained. His weakened smile could not hide his deflation as a result of his most curious discovery. He helped her with her coat as they prepared to depart. How could it be that he had dinner with a rice thief or a rice hoarder, whatever? It was a rice something, a Thai coconut rice something. As he hurriedly slung on his coat, a piece of restaurant cutlery fell from his sleeve, clanged off the tabletop, and bounced onto the floor. She had turned in time to notice the final tumble of a butter knife on the patterned restaurant carpet. Another piece of cutlery fell from the sleeve, and yet another. This time a dinner fork and a most elegant sculpted teaspoon. She pretended not to notice, but she couldn't help but notice that his coat pockets were filled with something. She quickly surveyed the empty tables and awaited new diners around her. The cutlery was missing from most of the place settings, and was peculiarly the place settings adjacent to their table. She could hear the muffled clanging clang of the Asian French-inspired cutlery in his pockets as they made their way through the doorway. How could such an elegant man be a thief of cutlery? Why would he be a thief of cutlery? He had lots of cutlery. He could have my cutlery if he wanted. Had he done this before at previous dinners? Is this why he has lots of cutlery? She grabbed his arm as they made their way down the steps onto the main street. The snow continued to fall on the spruce trees as they walked down the street into the night. He with 6.5 place settings of restaurant cutlery barely concealed in his coat pockets, and she with over 3.5 pounds of Thai coconut rice, and who knows whatever other menu items in her bulging Sergio Bertini leather bag on this most unusual early spring evening. That's my invitation for you to create. Thanks, you've been a great audience. We have a reception after. Any questions? I know it's hot in here. Sorry to go on so long. Questions? Questions? And you can email me, rkelly@ucalgary.ca. Any questions, anecdotes?
And we do have a reception downstairs in room 225 where you're able to talk directly to Bob if you're too shy to ask the question.